Hello there. It's 9:39 on the 26th of May, Tuesday, 2026, and I'm just leaving the AI event, which I have to say was certainly one of the better things I've ever attended, My car is full of humidity and steam. I just got off my bike after 4-ish miles getting here. So let's fix that a little bit. And I don't have a lot to say other than, I met a bunch of really cool people, and I enjoyed being in a room with people who are not purely terrified of AI and also, just generally giving into the fear narrative that surrounds it. But I had a specific conversation, and my dude, I hope you can forgive me. He was one of the people who put the event on, and he was from Austin, and he had a killer mustache, and he was a cool dude. But, we had a conversation, and it really was something that is sort of what I'm walking away from this whole event with, beyond just, having enjoyable conversations with people about AI, which, again, is a rarity in my experience. But yeah, being able to talk about how this guy who I was talking to, he had created this series of AI agents that would basically go through and look for, this is just one thing that he had designed, but if something was going on in the neighborhood and it was AI related, someone was just taking an opportunity on a Nextdoor style app to vent about, God, I'm going the wrong way. Let me think about this for a second. I want to get over to DeKalb Avenue. So I'm going to take a right-hand turn over on Breen, which is probably my favorite road in Cabbagetown, and hopefully not hit any transverse cyclists. How did I even get over here? Why didn't I go the right way the first time? Doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, again, I've had women in my life, and I talked to quite a few women tonight, which was definitely a treat to listen to a female perspective on what is otherwise a very male dominance and oriented industry, specifically straight white male people like myself. We make up the majority of the human infrastructure of these systems, And so hearing women talk about it was certainly interesting. Shout out to my mom. And, one of the things that I am coming away from this whole thing is that, I don't like the idea of it being an emotional argument, because it's not arguments. So the raccoon crossing the road, lol. What AI needs is not an emotional argument. It needs an emotional appeal, and it needs a strong emotional appeal. Because, the narrative that surrounds change and disruption, as far as humans are concerned, it's it makes us fearful. And fear is an easy emotion to prey upon and exacerbate. Shout out to my dad. And at this time, the best thing that people who are getting together to discuss AI, the best thing that we can really try to do is beyond just using the tool for a variety of different goals, is to think about how to wrap this whole thing in an emotional appeal towards the goodness of humanity. We haven't really done a good job with that in terms of PR. I think, it's hard to imagine that a handful of people could necessarily do better than the large companies that do this for a living with their PR and marketing, departments and everything. That probably, you can go. I don't, I'm a nice human. I'm a nice cow. But yeah, it's that's kind of what is needed now. And so that's kind of where I have been left after everything that was discussed. Again, there's a lot of implications, a lot of business and financial implications of AI. And that's not the stuff that interests me, at all about AI. I do think you could leverage it to make a lot of money. But I don't think that would be in the spirit of the endeavor, I personally don't think that money will be a meaningful measure of anything in the near-term future. I don't have like data or evidence to support this, but it's just my intuitive grasp on the whole thing is just like, money's going away, so how do human beings create meaning, and how does this tool sort of like help us in our grasp for that meaning? Like it's a tool that should take away the mundane labors of work away, and when work is gone, money is irrelevant. So let's assume that we're living in a universal high income society where basically every want, every need is provided. One of the most interesting things I've heard Elon Musk talk about in recent memory is that, these tools will increase productivity of the economy by 100 or 1,000 times, depending on the time scale that you're looking at it. And so if that's true, then that basically means that any desire a human being could even conceive of would be immediately achieved. Oof, God, that was a bad pothole. Did you hear that? Let's try not to hit any more of those. It's dark out, and it's been rainy all day. Yeah, so if every human need was immediately able to be gratified, what then do you do? And for me, I feel like I've actually had a glimpse of that life through the adventure seeking and escapism that I've pursued in the past 7 or so years, And so for me, it's not such a mystery. It's like, well, I would be able to go and bike anywhere, and the roads would be safe because they'd be driven on by autonomous vehicles and not human operated ones. And, I could just go experience places and people. And that's always been very gratifying. But the thing that pulls me back is the fact that it's like, well, this is not like a sustainable thing. And I kind of refuse, as you well know, that to turn my experience into a product. I really don't want to do that. It's a very distasteful idea for me. Becoming any kind of influencer, not that I would be able to just merely by trying, but by trying to do so, again, I think that there's enough evidence that I have consumed that social media is not good for people because it preys upon our social hierarchies. You kind of evaluate yourself against others in both directions. So, you find people who have it worse than you find people who have it better than you, and somewhere in between a large degree of dissatisfaction emerges, And so I'm not interested in doing that. But somehow turning what I do, what I like to do, into a sustainable life without having to worry about the doldrums of what current life requires, that's the intriguing part for me. It's important to remember that capitalism has not always existed, and just because it is the current paradigm that we're in doesn't mean that it will be the paradigm that we take with us as a species to the grave. I think there's plenty of room for things to change dramatically and astronomically, and being in a room with people who agree in varying degrees, that's what I wanted to kind of be around tonight, and it was great. I got to go for an awesome bike ride, about 10 miles beforehand, which always helps for me to kind of clear the pipes, physically and intellectually, and in terms of anxiety. I met a bunch of great people. Funny enough, I didn't actually end up talking to the guy who I actually knew who was putting on the event, at all in any kind of meaningful or long capacity, but there's another event like this that's going to be on the 9th of June, and I definitely will attend for sure. That's kind of one of the lasting lessons that I have taken from the time that I have spent with my parents, shout out to my parents, and others, shout out to Travis, that it really is about the time that you spend with people. And I think, in the past, I would have attended a similar kind of event once, and then just maybe not gone back for a variety of different reasons. Probably just well, I don't even know. I was doing the trail maintenance in February when I was still living at my parents' house, and the trail maintenance became more and more of a rewarding experience every single time I went, and it was vital that I went multiple times to establish relationships with the people, and also to get a handle on, like, you know, what I was doing and the tasks, like what they required of me, and, you know, learning about tools, learning about techniques, trying to anticipate what certain things would require so that I could be helpful and not just, like, you know, a bottleneck in whatever these people were trying to do. And, you know, I think the AI community, which is kind of a funny concept, because it's people surrounding computers, you know. I guess, you know, if you abstract it even from that, it's like it's human beings that are super intrigued by tools and tool usage. Oh wow, am I actually coming up to an actual train? Oh, I am. Wow. So I'm on DeKalb Avenue right now, going east toward my favorite road, and perhaps you recall, US 78, Stone Mountain Highway. And in order to get there, you have to go on this road, and this is DeKalb Avenue. And DeKalb Avenue does cross over a CSX line, and occasionally there's a CSX train that's, oh, and here's the end. That wasn't that bad. Got, like, a ton of people that were taking what do you call it? Not a side road. There's a better word for it, right? Side. I can't think of it. They were taking an alternate route, and yeah, all they had to do was have a little bit of patience, or just show up like I did at the right time, which is kind of what it felt like tonight. I felt like I showed up at the right time. I mean, I spoke with a lot of people, including the people who were also part of putting on the event. I don't mean to pat myself on the back so hard that my arm breaks, but I got an invite to go to the after party, you know what I'm saying, at the Claremont Lounge, which I've never been to before. And I didn't take it because, you know, the discretion is the greater part of valor. And I know that if I went there, I would end up getting really drunk and probably making less than educated decisions. You know, it's one thing to be on your bike where, you know, any problematic choice that you make is pretty much just your own cross to bear. But since I have to drive and things like that, better to not do that. I did get a free beer tonight, which was nice. You know, I was interested in a specific beer that they had on tap, and they didn't have it for the majority of the night. And then at some point, I guess they got it back on tap. And so the bartender very kindly brought me one for free. And I was like, my dude, you are the hero of the evening. You know, we're human beings, you know, we like alcohol, and we enjoy the social avenues that it opens up when it is present. You know, I listened to a podcast recently, it was another Andrew Huberman one, about, like, men, basically. And I forget the guy's name. I think his first name was Scott. But he talked at length about how, and I think I've mentioned this already, but I kind of liked what he was saying. It was like, you know, the drinking age should be lowered to 18, and young people should be encouraged to get together and drink, you know. And obviously there's a bunch of bad things that can happen in that scenario, but as I often say as well, I think the bad thing often doesn't happen. So, like, the worst case scenario is, like, somewhat, it's not the exception that proves the rule. It's like, you know, I don't know, human beings sharing. Like, human beings were governed by fear, you know. That's a primary, like, impulse and reaction to our environment and to stimulus, you know. It's like fear takes a variety of different incarnations, from social fears to physical fears. I mean, it makes sense, you know, if evolution is correct and biology can be depended on for explaining our behavior, it makes sense that, like, we over-evaluate the worst-case scenario as being more likely than it actually is, you know. And that's an important thing to recognize because, you know, going back to the man from Austin, Mustache Man, I'm going to call you Mustachio. Mustachio was talking about how he liked a point that I brought up where it's like, as soon as AI is at a point where we're, like, saving people's grandmothers from age-related decline, then its utility and its possible benevolence will be sort of, like, undeniable. But we're in this touchy area in between that state and the current moment, where it's like, you have to figure out how to make your point delicately, and that's another thing that I think I've been trying to practice, certainly not with 100% affinity. I forgive myself for my flaws, and I do feel the things that other people feel. I think I have a different way of dealing with it that is more or less successful depending on the day. But, by and large, I'm like, I'm a human being. I didn't choose to be here. I just kind of showed up after certain genetics were combined through reproduction. And here I am all of a sudden, And so it was fun kind of navigating this event because, I just kind of put it out there. I'm like, I'm not really, like, I enjoy technical aspects of AI in so much as, like, it's a very interesting thing to learn about, in so much as, did I just say that twice? Like, it's interesting to learn about it in the same way that it's interesting to learn about deep space or deep ocean life or biology in general. Like, it seems like something that's, like, so big that it's hard to fathom. And that is precisely what AI is, But the intriguing part is that it's so accessible, at least at this point in history, where, any human being can, like, get their hands on these tools and play around and make things. And, I was never, like, a Lego person or, like, a puzzle doer. Shout out to my mom. I think those are official terms, Lego person or puzzle doer. Sometimes I crack myself up with how out of touch I sound to myself. But it was edifying to be in a room of people who were like-minded, and, you couldn't really step on any toes because we were all there for the same thing, the same reason. Like, I've brought up artificial intelligence when it's certainly not appropriate, and again, it is like a political thing to even talk about, because it kind of means that you're in favor of billionaires, in favor of environmental destruction, perhaps like anti-species, or like going against your best interests as a carbon-based life form, But I really reject all that just out of hand, because I'm like, well, that's a fear response. That's like anthropomorphizing something that is fundamentally different than human beings, but something that human beings can certainly, shape. I don't know. I feel like I have thoughts that are bigger than my words can express, but I guess, by and large, the whole point is that this evening was a success, and I look forward to doing more of what I did tonight. This was like a proof of concept for me. It's like, I want to spend more time with people. I want to spend more time with people who feel good about AI. Like, it's a rarefied group, It takes cognitive effort to be in a place where you feel good about what's happening to the world, because you can explain it to yourself logically, and then also feel emotionally content with what the logic is telling you. So, yeah, that was great. And boy, does it seem dark out here. My headlights, shout out to my dad, they are not so bright. But yeah, I'm heading back to my aunt's house. I'm gonna make some eggs and maybe have another beer. You know what I'm saying? I think that you do. Nothing a quick stop at a gas station can't resolve. And, I love to cook and drink. What did Julia Child say? She was like, I love cooking with wine. Sometimes I even put it in my food. That's the kind of vibe I'm dealing with here. Ooh, I need to make it through this light. I don't want to wait for another cycle. Let's hope that didn't equate to a ticket. But hey, they'll have their choice, because I have two different license plates. I have one on the front, one on the back, and they are not the same. So good luck, my dude. And yeah, I'm about to jump on 78, and I'm certainly more interested in what Notebook LM has to say about my thoughts of the evening. It would probably be beneficial for me to put the clip I did before and this one together to make a coherent narrative. And yeah, a good evening. I'm feeling better and better about my move to Atlanta. There was no explicit talk about jobs or anything like that, but that's really not the point. Jobs are just like money. Jobs are the means to an end in order to acquire money. And for now, at least, this is about building relationships and seeing what those relationships can foster in a more, material way eventually. But it's like that's a byproduct of like what I want to use my time with people in order to achieve. It's like, okay, if there's money as a part of this relationship, great. Like no one's going to turn their nose up at that, but that's not first and foremost why I'm here, and that's definitely not first and foremost why I was there tonight. So I'll leave it there for now. And yeah, dude, I'm looking forward to more. It feels good to feel good, and I think all people could relate to that. So for now, shout out to my parents. Love you. Bye.